I like attention too. I think attention is important to know, to be able to know what's in our attention is actually very profound. And for most of us, we don't have that relationship with what is in our attention. We don't have that
Yeah.
fine-tuned ability to slow down and be in relationship with our moment in this culture that no one talks about it in this culture. In fact, it's the opposite. It's like, don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain or to the actual factual of this moment. Just go
Mhm.
buy another blah blah. Go,
Right.
go turn on your blah blah, or not that any of those blah blahs are bad, but we
Right.
lose our sovereignty or our sense of self when we do that. We don't have
Right.
actually one. We don't have
We're
we're not in
being
relationship.
directed.
Yes,
It's like
yes.
someone grabbed us and went, here, here,
Right,
here.
right, which is so
Yeah.
disempowering, right? Like if we're not in relationship with what our attention is including and excluding, and then all the other things that you said, we live very disempowered lives.
Mhm.
We're at the mercy of not our moment. We're at the mercy of whatever's
Right.
being fed to us. So
Right.
yeah.
And then the danger is that it becomes a habit, right? So they let go of us for a
Mhm.
moment and we're on our own, but I've still got this habit of here, there, where, what?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so part of the work we do somatically is helping people notice where their attention goes, because that
Mhm.
can be step one. Like, what's
Yeah,
calling for your attention right now? What's your habit of attention? What do you focus on first?
exactly. Yes. I call those like first responders or predictables.
Oh, tell me.
Well, our attention is habituated, like you're saying.
Yeah.
It's habituated to land in certain ways with certain data. And so
Mhm.
we might reference externally all the time, habitually. We might reference our thoughts. So we're really taking our thoughts as um, our gods, so to speak, or the
Okay.
outside world as the main influences of our experience. And so that happens,
Mhm.
that's a neural pathway thing, right? It just gets created as a habit. And it's a
Mhm.
first responder. It's a predictable way that we orient. So we
Right.
want we just want to know that, like, oh, I'm not even including myself. I'm lost in the cardinal, or I'm lost in you, or like, and it's like
Mhm.
I want to be both and, right? I want to be with you, but I don't want to
Yeah.
leave me behind. Like, why would I want to? I want to actually include me first and bring you into
Mhm.
my world, so to speak, and then we're together, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's
that
really
so that kind
interesting.
of went off in a tangent, but we want to know our predictables. We want to know how attention is habituated, and then we can see how there might be other ways to play with attention. What else do we want to include? What might have a different experience in our reality when we
Right.
include something else in our attention?
Right. And you do that, I assume, by guiding people through certain practices. And that's
Mhm.
built into the movement lessons we do. It's like
Right.
you notice where your attention goes, and then either you
Mhm.
can choose to direct your attention elsewhere, or you can choose to follow the invitation to direct your attention elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have to say that years into this process, I literally needed to tie this practice to a somatic practice uh,
Mhm.
that practice
Mhm.
regularly, um, in order for it to become natural and easy, in order for that to become a habit, so that now I
Mhm.
can walk up to something and say, oh, you know, I'm focused here right now. Is that where I want my focus to be?
Mhm.
And
Right.
then I have choice in the moment, which is
Yes, then you
really
have choice.
liberating.
Yes, because
Yeah.
that's where empowerment comes from, is being able to choose. We're
Yeah.
literally able to choose our reality in that way and experience. Just pretty powerful.
Wow. Can you go on about that? Because I had a question for you in one of our past conversations.
Yeah, yeah.
We briefly touched on bypassing and
Yeah.
positivity. And
Mm,
so when people talk about
mm,
creating their reality, sometimes they get sucked into this whitewashing, I call it,
Yes.
where they want to focus just on the positive. But
Yeah.
from the perspective of my work, that doesn't work. How do you deal with it
No.
in your work?
Well, it doesn't work for anyone, actually.
Good to know.
But it might feel like it does because positivity feels good. And so if I have, if I have a broken, well, I don't know, let's not go so extreme, like a sprain, it's going to feel good to ice it or to numb it, right? So that feels good. Well, the torn ligament or whatever is still there. It's not gone.
True.
But the numbing agent could be positivity, right? It could be like, look over here, look over there. Like, let's repeat these sentences that really are beautiful. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's like, we need ice actually, right? We need numbing agents. We need lots of things, but we don't want to be exclusionary, right? We want to be like, okay, this is the time to numb it or to use ice, and until I can include the work to do the underlying work.
Right.
And so if we only are connecting to positivity, then we're like planting, I always use this like metaphor, we're planting flowers on a sewage tank. The sewage tank's just going to keep filling up. It's going to come to the surface. Well, you got to plant more flowers. You got to avoid more. You got to like duck and cover and like, repress and push down, keep adding the ice, right? Well, it's just not sustainable. So there's nothing wrong with positive affirmations, but they don't have to, but it's more useful and sustainable when they are actually relatable to your experience and not a head trip or a fantasy, right? So we talk about, this comes back to desires, and I was with a client last night, and we were talking about the desire inventory that we do in my classes, and it's like there's nothing wrong with those desires that are conceptual or fantasy based or idea based. So anything that we think is imagined or fantasy, like that's all together. And again, there's nothing wrong with I would love to be on the Miami Beach, on Miami Beach right now. I could imagine that. Yeah. That kind of, it doesn't actually right now bring me anything, to be honest, but in a certain moment it would. It's just, I'm very fulfilled right now. So there's nothing maybe more fulfilling than this moment for me. I don't know. But in another moment, it might be like, oh, I'm just going to imagine Miami Beach, and like that would be lovely.
Yeah.
However, it's a Band-Aid. We don't want to rely on our imaginations for our well-being, right? We want to learn how, okay, like what do I get from that imagining? Like what is it, again, that I really desire? What's actually here? So if I have a positive affirmation, I want to bring it around to a somatic reality. I want to bring it around to an experiential reality. So that affirmation is landing in my experience. Otherwise, I just have to be in my head all the time. That's one, exhausting, and two, there's no agency and empowerment in that. But it might feel like there is. So that's why people will keep doing it. They don't want to, landing in is not easy, right? Because when you land in, we're going to come into some other things that we might not like the pain of the arm, right?
Right.
Or in my world, we might call it shadows, or the shadow world, or things that we're uncomfortable with, right? Or aspects of our life that we have dissatisfaction with,
right?
Or,
and I want to get back to the fantasizing that we all do. That's lovely and wonderful, and that ties back to imagination and dreams. All of these essentials, I want to point out, are to inform our action, right? We are about movement, and you can think about even our thinking and any kind of doing we do is sort of action. So how do we want this to inform our action? So we have these desires, we have imagination and dreams, and we can harness their power.
Yes.
And then we have to figure out, how do they inform our actions?
That's right. It's and both. So it's using the power of imagination and dreams, which is very important, and then tapping into it with our bodies and our cognition into action.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because there's clearly nothing wrong with imagination. There's clearly nothing wrong with
Right.
fantasy. It's a
No.
tool. It's really important. But
Right.
we don't want to exclude it or live only there.
Right.
I'm reading a
There's
book by, oh, go ahead.
there's been so much attention given to the power of the mind,
Mhm.
that it sort of cements this dichotomy that the Western world has invented of the mind and body. And so, yes, people will cite that study where, oh, if you just mentally rehearse
Yeah.
playing the
Yeah.
piano, it improves your piano skill. And of course it does.
Yeah.
However, I would challenge you to find any concert pianist who trained solely in the mind.